PF on the eastern side. Obviously, some of the colours has changed, but not has the team. So we've got Nexus over towards Impala. We've got Potpariso, held by Mad Bulls. Obviously, Excuse Me is going to head down towards the south side as well. Typically picking up this Los Higos split, which is very nice for rotation up towards that western side. And we do see a lot of times that Excuse Me will not stay with the mold, right? I assume that Excuse Me is going to make a western rotation here and try and beat out this massive eastern push from a lot of these teams, understanding where the playing path currently is.
Yeah, De Muerte most likely going to try and make their way out towards Montenuevo, so potential conflict there. De Muerte, a team that made a massive splash in phase 1 and then just rippled out over the second 2 phases. This finals is going to be their chance to try and stand up a little bit taller, and they are still within striking distance of the top of the tables on those bonus points. 57 bonus points coming into this phase puts them just 19 points behind first place Major Pride on 76. So there's still very much a chance for De Muerte, but if their history in the last 2 phases is anything to go by, I don't expect it to happen.
I think that you're looking at this with De Muerte, and honestly, they've had some good games, right? They were able to look like they're towards that former glory just a little bit, right? But not massively. I think there's been those few moments here and there where you think to yourself, you know what, De Muerte looks like they can keep this one up, but they've never been able to roll that momentum through, John. I think that's one of the major issues that we've actually come into quite a few times, is that that momentum from game to game just doesn't remain for De Muerte, and you're just looking for that one game a day where you're going to put up some points, perhaps keep yourself in the standings just a little bit. Obviously, as Calaris is happy to note now, they're not a 12th place team. They were able to rank up just a little bit, only a little bit though overall. On our screen right now, Game Lord, currently the French powerhouse as Max puts it, looking very, very good, these guys, looking a lot better from week to week. Still not quite that high caliber team though, I would say. Still have some troubles in that end game. And it does feel like there are certain situations where they just flop over and then just die.
Yeah, it's great to see it when it works, but they do, as you say, have those small falters that really separate a third place team from a first place team right now. Gladiators as well, similarly, I feel like they have that same vibe going on as well. From that northern side, La Cobreria, they do just seem to make 1 or 2 bum decisions over the course in a match and kind of snowball their mental game out of it and start to fall at those hurdles where perhaps we would expect them to be able to surmount these difficulties a little bit more effectively. Hopefully, they will have addressed those issues and changed things coming into these finals.
So, map currently circle over towards that western side. Picardo, centre point, as is San Martin. So obviously Game Log going to be quite happy with this one. Slayer off towards that east. A little bit of a downwards trend from these lads, really. I think that they had some very, very strong positions in phase 2 where they were able to control the circle quite a bit. But it just feels like there have been some more of the usual suspects now starting to take those higher positions in the lobby, picking themselves up some good elimination counts. Even if they're not getting the chicken dinners, we are starting to see some of these teams really play their hand now. And so as we're coming towards the end of the tournament, there's no reason not to, right? If you want to start pushing now, it is the time to do it. Unicorns are love though. Zero going down, gets knocked out. Shockwave most likely going to pick that one up. I think Unicorns Love have done a very, very good job this tournament to hang on as much as they have done. I think they've made significant improvements here and there. I think they are still quite far behind a lot of the teams in this lobby though.
You do wonder if this roster will stick around for the next season, because Unicorns of Love, as an organization, notoriously chopping and changing their roster probably more than any other organization going in this region. So being able to pick things up, performing admirably, as you say, over the last couple of games, haven't really had the impact that they would have wanted with this roster. So are we going to see the same roster come through in the next season? Maybe not.
I mean, it's a good team, honestly. I think they have a lot of good players there. Swave, Michi, Beast, Zero, all fairly decent players in the right. I think that, you know, with a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, we can definitely see them further towards the top of the rankings. I think that they just have had that downward trend without really finding something that puts them back on the map, right? I think looking back when they were on Big, as well as Destiny, those were the heydays, right? And even when they were on Big, they were starting to fall off just a little bit then. I think for this team, there is potential, but it's not been quite found just yet. Sly Europe now have moved in. This is quite a quick move from them over towards that western side. They got themselves up towards San Martin Way, up that treacherous hill just towards that western side of Graveyard. So in a fairly decent spot in the center of the circle for next shift. They should be able to get into a good position from there. Including that, they found a position to loot up. So even though they were looted up in Graveyard in the first place, they will get a little bit more utility on board, which is going to be important for that end game, especially because they are now so much in the thick of it, right? Monkey, though, going down to Kazakh team. That's Unicorn. Does run out of ammo, but Monkey's not likely to get into cover anytime soon.
Not ideal for Championship hopefuls Major Pride to lose a player this early on the first match, but sometimes that's just how it goes. They'll play on with 3. Kazakh team opening up the clip, as well as Dark Project chiming in across the valley. Unicorn a little bit isolated right now from the rest of his roster, but Major Pride trying to sequester themselves in any nook and cranny they can find. No Meat drops the smoke to maybe get back to the building. Latte finds Effect, and yeah, look at the condensation of teams right there in the middle. It's not going well for Major Pride.
It seems to be a reoccurring trend now, actually, is Major Pride losing a couple of members at the beginning of the game, which is obviously unideal. We don't like to see it. I think for Major Pride, they hate to see it just a little bit more. They'd rather take the glasses off, leave that prescription behind, and just return to that blurry vision. Because right now, it's not looking good. Obviously, those bonus points will prop them up, but you want to start off the tournament strong. You want to increase that lead as much as you can in that first day. Otherwise, teams behind you might start to catch up, and those bonus points kind of all for naught. Sat at the top there. Virtus Pro, much better job. Main man Folly, obviously, bringing the team a good amount of victory on their side. Nowhere near as good as it needs to be for a championship finish, but I think for Virtus Pro, they've had a lot of fun with this tournament. You can tell with the way they've been playing, and they have been playing a little bit scared in that phase 1, but changing up those tacks now has been really nice to see. Obviously, you can see a team like get kind of stuck in their ways just a little bit, and I think for Virtus Pro, they realise that something has to change, something has to give, and they certainly have run with the tide. So really, really good job to them. And it's nice to see them here in the finals. Rotating through, Sly Europe has pretty much good broadside on them. Though, moving through this awkward terrain quite slowly. Reflect just to line up the shot, but doesn't go for it. And Singly might just make away from this one.
Waiting for the teammates to crest the ridgeline so you can go for that team shot. Reflect holds the trigger discipline. And they pick up a Virtus Pro player. Nice little find there for Sly Europe. A lot of teams heading very central early on in phase 1. Blank, and with the circle centering up, that's going to favor the teams that did so moving into this second phase. The circle shutting in around Picardo and Power Grid.
My Bulls headed up from Puerto Paraiso, past Los Leones. Not a lot of teams in there, so we can make a quick, speedy rotate through that position. We'll be moving up on the south side now. In front of them is Kanina Power. Also got Kazakh in the way. This is that pretty hilly region, though, so a lot of these teams should be fairly easily tucked away in these craggy outposts. Down towards the south side, even further, though, it is Excuse Me. Obviously, really good job to them in phase 3. I think the major change that they went for is just having a bit more control over those end games, not allowing the chicken dinners to come to them. But they still do play this quite fluid play style of just moving in between center and edge play very nicely. Typically start off with a very much edge-focused play style, sweeping, but tend to not try and get in too many fights early on, rather dominate that end game with the 4 players on side. And it's a really interesting play style. I love to see it. There's not many teams that can make that happen, who have so much trust in the 4-man power of the squad. And I think Excuse Me's at this point in time, have found their niche, found their role in the lobby, and it's working out nicely.
That niche has seen them to 65 bonus points to kick off their phase, so definitely in that leading pack. See if they can keep up. Major Pride already taking those 2 knocks as well. That's good news for the top 5 on those tables in general. Virtus Pro taking another knock to Nexus. Not ideal. They already lost a player earlier, and losing a second in their position to the northeast of Picardo is pretty disastrous. Actually, Purple very isolated, you can see, just to the northeast point of Picardo. Very, very split from Folly and off Haze, further out to that northeast side.
For Virtus Pro, I don't know if they can get Purple back up again. It seems that he is fairly safe position. I think off Haze and Folly most likely will just leave him behind. Not really worth it going through this mad dash in the valley. AR moving up towards Gladiators. That's Matic. Moving away in the buggy. Does stop dead. Kind of gives him the slip though. Full mag wasted there. Purple goes down. Matic moves underneath. A bold play to be sure. Doesn't quite work out. And the rest of Gladiators aren't there to assist. So Becca will find at least one of them. But again, this isn't the worst thing in the world for Gladiators. I think they have tried a lot more times to go for these riskier plays and just brush it off when they lose a player here and there. They tried their best, but when they do get themselves into a good position on these maps, they typically find themselves either a chicken dinner or a very high elimination count game, which is the ideal for them. Canadian Power moving in, but Mad Bulls already set up in a nice position. Frozen popping off in phase 3. Seems to be doing the same here in the finals.
Look at those shots as well from the high ground. It's really, really difficult for Canina Power to make this crash. Gladiator is sending out towards that north side, towards Shockwave as well, as ARR clash with Muerte on the west side. Dark Project have overlook on the entire thing as well. In a very, very split line right now for Dark Project, but might be enough to hold out all of these teams. Muerte already trying to make that break through the center of that line and managed to find a little bit of a gap, and it's going to be good news for Muerte to get ahead of the train.
Gladiator is down to 2 players versus Shockwave. Do find one on the approach, but that is a 3v2 now. Quite a difficult task ahead of them. Meku going down, Kitsune also down the floor. Just Tixie now left remaining. Will have to make it on foot by himself. It's in the vehicle, we'll just send away. Slayer up in a really nice spot up on the ridge side, looking down towards Picardo. This could easily move down south, though, with Mad Bulls in a very good position to take advantage of that type of game. Kazakh also have an outpost up towards Picardo, but also have some players towards that western side of Picardo too. So, nice couple of spots there for them. Different ideas, but with the Muerte rolling up behind them, Striker might have to be a bit careful here.
Muerte made a really solid push straight through the line of Dark Project to see them close to the outpost of Kazakh. It's much further north than the rest of them. Hopefully they have some safety from the back, as Dark Project and ARR both looking to move in through this area. Northwest side Game Lord, leave Akashi on the far side of the ground they currently occupy southwest of San Martin. It looks like they want to regroup out that way as well. Sly a little bit ahead of them, probably their main challenge in the coming phases.
I think Sly on this early approach, right, from Graveyard, it's where they've suffered a lot of times, is making that cross from the warehouse on that roadside in the valley up towards this position, San Martin. This time they just eliminate that problem entirely right from the get-go. Just move straight up this mountainside, up towards that ridge. Great position to be in. Dagestan coming up against Shockwave right now. I think they're currently at 4 players. Dagestan might be able to get something done here, and that is the circle shift that Mad Bulls were looking for. Heads down their way on the south side. Major Pride will be a little bit happier with this one too. Be able to keep it going. Off on those cliff edges, a little bit awkward to play in, but I think it's certainly one of those positions that you can stay tucked in for quite some time, playing hide and seek with the opponents. On that western side, I think AR realises that there's some urgency right now to finish off the Dark Project players, because they have to start moving in, find themselves a position on the map.
Well, that's very much not ideal for Muerte, losing Milky Way there. I imagine that was a buggy spin out. And just caught out in the open a little bit. The 2-2 split in Picardo from the Mad Bulls looks to regroup a little bit as Canina Power try and push in on that northwest side. You can see Terminus just getting sprayed down on the open. Not really much you can do about that, other than control that angle to start with. Dagestan moving in with 4.
Sending down. Realise that Shockwave's pretty limited on players, or at least trying to get the team back up to a good health pool, so Dagestan takes the opportunity to move down towards that south side. There will be passing by Game Lord though, and that is one of the scarier things to come into contact with. Victor drops out, gets a good amount of damage done. That's Limbo Boom down, John.
keep under pressure as well. Very, very low HP there. Just over the ridgeline, looks to pop the first aid, but there's a high swing coming out. Narvalo able to seal the deal, but there's still more threats waiting in these hills. You can see that third-party turn for Shockwave to maybe get some sort of a position to take the fight. Instead, they're going to be backed off by a nice volley from Game Lord. Aza not really in a position to get that off angle for the squad, and now Shockwave have to reconsider their approach.
That's a good swing from Game Lord. I think a few times they've been taken down by these third parties, but this time around, nice on that 180. Dagestan sending through, trying to skirt past these sandy deserts, which are causing so many difficulties with these players just popping out from underneath. Wait, though, one of the best players there on Dark Project, taking a huge amount of damage. One of his players is down, his last remaining, but looks like Elementrix will try and put a stop to this one. First aid kit goes through. Striker still on top of that hillside, causing absolute pandemonium in the lobby.
Elementrix pulling the pin on the nade. Don't think he knows where Wait is, but that's going to give him a clue about where he's taken threat from. Tapok breaks out wide, a nicely placed nade from Wait, but he's just under too much pressure, and Tapok sweeps them away. Dark Project eliminated now as ARR keep going with 3. Under the watchful shots of Striker, who's been playing on this high ground for a long, long time. Demuerte were diverted by it. And now ARR lose Elementrix to the Game Lord roll-up. This is the third party coming through.
It's a great job from Game Lord so far, taking some really opportune fights for themselves. 2 down now for AR with 1 last remaining. Aces all the way in the back there. Game Lord up to 5 eliminations. AR no slouch in the elimination category either, up to 7 for themselves. So not a bad game if they go down now. Virtus Pro try to move their way into Picardo, but were stopped short by Mad Bulls. Next circle will be hitting very shortly.
Mad Bulls have been controlling a lot of area in Picardo, not moving all the way up to the top of the hill, but they played that 2-2 split for a while. They are on a more condensed 2-2 split now for the Mad Bulls to keep that control, and it looks like it's going well. That circle means that it's most likely not going to be finishing all the way inside Picardo, though. It would take a couple of hard shifts for that to come through.
Yeah, pretty difficult circle to play, actually. Quite open ground towards that northeast side, and I think for most teams in Picardo, they'll still be quite happy to stay there as long as they can. If the circle shifts away from that position, they will have to move. That most likely will mean Smokes moving up towards the ridge sides that currently Excuse Me and Nexus hold. And again, this is that Excuse Me push that we wait for every single game now, John. Excuse Me move down towards that south side. Excuse Me finds themselves a couple of compounds, confidently picking that one up with the scouting they've been doing. And now they'll start to put in that work.
Try and move in for some control there. Sly Europe on the northern side as well. Talked about how they can get in these positions. Sometimes these late games that struggle to close them out. But for Sly Europe on that north side, there's a lot of ground that they can start to leverage, especially with the teams out to their west being mostly diminished, apart from Game Lord.
I mean, it's a bit of a difficult one for themselves. I think for Sly Europe, moving down this hillside will be quite treacherous. Certainly possible. They have 4 members still on board. Shockwave will be that big task ahead of them. There's a huge amount of teams down that way too, but they will be able to get some nice third parties off. Massive explosion comes through, and Striker has been absolutely phenomenal on these hilltops so far.
Pivotal, really. No one has been given the opportunity to go up and challenge him. That west side ascent is impossible with the number of players littering it right now. Game Lord busted down to 2 on the western edge. And this is huge value, you're right, but Striker will have to leave it most likely in the coming moments.
It's good though, because I think the rest of his team's actually moved up behind him to try and give him that escape route. Yes, they're outside of the circle right now, but again, with Game Lord being limited on players, and Striker getting that massive opening means that that area of the map actually just a little bit more open than they might think. So I think for Kazakh team, they could squeeze themselves on this edge, but look at the amount of teams that are in this area. You can see it on the top right of your screen there. There's so many separate players, separate squads, all just huddled in this arena. And very little players out on this eastern side. Unicorns of Love and Nexus, who have had a bit of a comeback over in Phase 3, look to take things from that hillside. Bit open, but there is some trees, some rocks to play around in that area.
Very split prediction decisions right now. It's a treacherous circle for pretty much anyone and no one with a firm grasp of it. Sly Europe have moved down to the northern side of this west edge engagement. They've left Reflect back as their off angle to just hold out any teams trying to skirt in on the eastern side. Shockwave still playing close, and Tenchik, Zashipa both close by. Doesn't have any nades for Tenchik, so can't really go for these pushes around the edge.
They've been pretty dry on utility for quite some time over that north side. Obviously not finding too much that they'd like. Again, this is really good for Mad Bulls. This is exactly the kind of Soka you want to be having if you're on that Picardo finish and you get that hard northeast shift, because this just means more and more teams have to move down towards your position where it becomes a lot more open. And honestly, you can start to win a game from Picardo at stage 5 at this point in time. You can start to clear out so many squads, do so much damage to all these teams. By the time it rolls round to that stage 7 that you have to leave Picardo, it doesn't matter anyway, because you've already crushed these squads.
Speaking of crushing, Striker's just lobbing boulder after boulder down these hills, but needs to be careful. If he goes down here, it's a pretty impossible res for the rest of the team, and eventually he will run out of supplies up there with nobody else challenging him on that spot. So make hay while the sun shines for Kazakh team. Try and get as much done as you can, and at the moment, 5 eliminations. That's some pretty tasty hay.
Yeah, superb quality, one might say. Kazakh team, English as well as Unicorn, they're on the outside edge. Like you said, pretty impossible res to go for. English takes quite a fair bit of damage there. Major Pride did go down to 2, I believe, but still rocking it over towards that western side, outside of the circle. And look at that, it's a pretty tall mountain they have to climb into a fair few separate players. So for Major Pride, really the only option is to head down south. But even then, you're moving in towards Kanina Power's territory. Excuse me, finally, rotate upwards. All maintaining a singular building on that south side. Black's last to move there. Nexus have all sent up towards a little bit of hard cover off towards that northeast side. Again, this is why things are so difficult. Striker drops down, but Victor deals with it.
Oh, and more to light up as well. Unicorn last to fall, but the Kazakh team tumble over the cliffside and take too much damage. Game Lords stay alive as 2 on that western edge, but they've got to go a little bit further. Sly are pulling back from the corralling they were doing on the north side of this engagement, and are going to allow everybody else to fight this one out.
Tenchik goes down to Nexus. Again, not a huge amount of cover on that eastern side. Still workable right now. Major Pride fighting and decide to move up. Shifu, in a very cheeky little spot here, is known for this type of thing, and Dino goes down. Nomi's not there to support, and he will probably move out. Flush this one. Does go for it with the micro Uzi, and now Nomi has to figure out something.
Shifu takes a lot of damage there, but doesn't go down just yet. We know how sneaky this guy can be for Dagestan. The res came through onto Tenchik for Sly on the northern sides. Shifu's still going. Dagestan still have their horse in the race. Shots over from Zashipa towards Akashi, and that's a flush. Taken very, very quickly. Nomi puts a nade back over towards Shifu, and that one will do the job, and Dagestan fall with it.
So far, Game Lords had an absolute firecracker of a game. 10 eliminations so far. Actually, a pretty good clutch from Akashi and Victor over towards the Kazakh team players. I think they tried to quite literally get the drop on them, but both players were very ready for this type of situation, constantly looking up, realizing that they're in a very nice spot to hold out this game for quite some time. Circle moves up towards the center right now. The only team that's still in this is Virtus Pro. Now, Mad Bulls can move off towards the eastern side, try and pick up that compound for themselves, but Nexus also slowly moves down that way. Excuse me, right on the outer edge. So 3 teams gunning for this singular spot, and these 2 players from Virtus Pro, I imagine, are starting to sweat just a little bit now as they realize they're prime target for a lot of these teams.
So now I think the dominant position will be established for one of these teams. Unicorns are love swept out on the eastern side, allowing Sly a little bit more mobility, but it's still a difficult descent from the ridgeline. Nexus playing fairly terrain-based right now and having to drop some smokes to keep their cover.
That's nice.
If they can expend as many as possible, they can keep themselves safe until teams have to rotate in.
That is beautiful coming through from Excuse Me. I saw the smoke train being delivered, and they've managed to get themselves into this spot. No casualties either. What a push coming through from Excuse Me. Havlik takes a massive beating, but will be able to patch himself up quite nicely. In come the nades, and Mad Bulls are prepared for this, but Excuse Me realizes that there's a team in this position, and they're happy to move forward into this spot. Game Lord finally goes down. That's the scrim. Chulika sends some nades in. Havlik goes down, so now it's a 3v4, and Mad Bulls have a ton of grenades to work with here.
Oh, Black is right on the corner, needs to get value, sees him immediately taken down, spots the window, will see the player close by as well. Fleeke trying to move in and repair what was lost here. Zerich, the only one to fall right now for the Mad Bulls, and Excuse Me, want to fend this off. They need this back clear. Furia lit up around the door frame, and that is not good news, but it is traded 1-for-1 yet again. Black on the upper floor, wanting to try and protect Havlik, but Tulika and Frozen have other ideas. The last player now standing. Flush is coming through as Zerich didn't get lit up just there. Black, the only operative now for Excuse Me. The smoke train was good, but it put them right on and into the fire.
Has to threaten this res now. Go a little bit further. He's at least able to get one of those flushes. Zerich will be picked back up again, but the circle is enclosing. Havlik moves through, will be continuing to get that information back across. Zerich instantly gets re-knocked by the blue. Almost impossible to work with at this stage. And now nades from Black become all the more valuable as Mad Bulls have to push into their spot. I think that might be a decent-ish nade coming through from Frozen. Will at least flush out Havlik, leaving the guys from Excuse Me down to just 2 now.
Nexus are going to have broadside on Black's rotations now. Sly are playing 2-2 split behind some terrain. Kapahala wants the off angle across here, but you can see Mandarin and Jashipa making that really, really difficult to leverage. 3 players for the Mad Bulls, 2 players for Excuse Me now. Playing on out in the open, Tenchik wants to get Aggie.
Nade could go over the top. Plays quite nicely, but not a huge amount of damage. Keme just takes a lick. And we'll get out of dodge there. Excuse Me moves further down towards that southeast side. Still on the edge of the blue, though. Little to no cover to work with now as the circle heads further towards that central side. Nexus getting lit up. Kapahala takes a massive amount of damage. Most of these players will have to start cresting these ridges. Black moves out. Becker provides a bit of support to him as he gets towards this wall.
These smokes from Nexus are going to be running really, really bare at this stage. Tenchik rotated around, and that's the first find over towards Kapahala on the Nexus roster. Tenchik getting sent back a little bit. Bullets at the heels from Octavian, but not really getting what they were looking for. Beck down, and Black now last standing for Excuse Me. Out in the open. Frozen moves up to that ridgeline. Reflect spotted. Octavian immediately knocked back, but the flush went through nonetheless. Another knock over towards the Sheeper as well. Nexus are eliminated. 3 players active still from Mad Bulls.
Sly Europe taking a massive amount of hits right now. Tenchik sends some smokes out, trying to get towards the rest of his squad, but Zerich and the Mad Bulls are having a field day over on this side. Sly Europe now down to do 2 players. Black still working for his position over towards that wall side. Now Mad Bulls have to move out. Tenchik, very difficult to remove from that shack, John.
Will do it himself, unfortunately, for Sly Europe. Tulika gets the flush. Mandarin now last standing. Excuse Me, have their hopes on Black. See just what they're able to do with it. Right out into the edge. Black is spotted here, or certainly should be, by Mandarin. Stands up and just goes for the point, goes for the team elimination. Mad Bulls, 1v3 Frozen, gets the first shot. Mad Bulls take it home.
It's funny, actually, because I don't think anyone... Yeah, no one predicted Mad Bulls. I feel like they were pretty typical pick to go for. I think we set them up quite nicely, as I was saying. You know, they're in a really good spot towards the central side of Picardo.